SportsGrid.com. I am not Art Lewis. I'm Jonathan Dent, hosting the show here today, and I'll be with you a few times next week as well as we get through the month of June. We talked with Dylan Clark last hour. Coming up, we'll be talking in focus about a men's health fair in Saginaw. That will be this weekend, but I don't know if you guys have heard, but there is a big football tournament coming to the United States, Canada, and Mexico. No, not that kind of football. It's World Cup soccer, and it's starting next week. Here to talk a little bit about that is Steve Walker. He is a coach with Oakland County. Is it Football Club? Is that what FC stands for?
Yep, that's Oakland County, the USL2 side.
What's USL2 stand for? Is that just
United Soccer League?
Okay.
So
right.
it's the actual last level of semi-professional before it goes to professional league at USL 1 and then USL Championship.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. So, well, thank you for joining us here this morning. I warned you before we went on the air that I know basically nothing. I haven't even seen Ted Lasso. I don't.
It's a great show. You're missing out. I ain't gonna lie. It's a great show.
I don't know. So I brought someone who knows a little bit more about sports. Charlie Rood is going to co-host here in this hour.
Well, and to that point, I still have a lot to learn about football or soccer, which will be my first question. It's kind of funny you say that. It's the football club in the United Soccer League.
In the United Soccer League, yeah, it's that. It's the play on words, if you will. I think everybody likes to throw the football club in there, and then so not everybody. Or usually they'll spell it F-U-T.
Okay.
As opposed to actual proper football.
But that's our American terminology. We call it soccer, and the rest of the world knows it as football.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure there'll be a little bit of confusion about that in the coming weeks, months. Before we get into the tournament itself and kind of all these teams that are going to be playing here in North America, even it's an expanded tournament this year, I'd like to get some background on you. The Oakland County Football Club. How long have you been coaching there?
So it's a summer league. So we play. It's pretty much mostly college players in the summertime. Just kind of keeps them ticking over. So this will be my third season as the head coach of the club. It was something I got into a couple of years ago. An old friend of mine was part of the club, and I'd reached out to him. It was just another level of coaching. A different kind of style to get into. Again, older players. I was obviously used to working with younger players in the club side of things. So I really enjoy it. Like I said, it's a different speed. Obviously the players are there. The higher level player. The games are very competitive. It's actually the one team that Tracy watches regularly. She never misses a game. So. She's always making sure that she's kind of chatting to me about that and asking what the lineups are going to be. So, yeah, it's been good. I've enjoyed it. Last year we got new owners to the club, so they brought in a lot of good ideas and obviously want to kind of push the group forward and make it a little bit more of a full-time professional club.
So what is... I'm going to ask kind of three tiers of a question here, which is bad form. But what's the health of football or soccer in Michigan and kind of in the U.S. in general?
Believe it or not, Michigan is actually quite a bit of a hotbed. There is a lot of very good professional programs. Obviously, you have DCFC down in Detroit that made the jump to USL Championships, and they're doing very well. Then obviously the college level, there's some very good college teams, from Division 1 all the way down through to JUCO. I mean, Delta College here in town, back-to-back national champions on the women's side. Saginaw Valley's men's team were always very, successful with the GLIAC. And then you've got, obviously, your Michigan States, your Michigans, Oakland, Western Michigan, on the west side of the state is a very, successful program on the men's side and on the women's side. So as far as college setup, and the professional setup, it's very strong state. I mean, from a club side of things, there's a lot of club players. Obviously, I work down in Detroit. There's a lot of club teams down there, and the club teams that play at all different levels. All the way through to national level. So, I mean, for a small state in the Midwest, it is pretty successful. It's a very strong state. It does produce a lot of good quality players. And a lot of players that kind of travel to other locations and go and play as well. So,
and you're just at that level. Let's take it down to even below that. every high school
Yep.
has a soccer team,
Yep.
and all the elementary schools, you can't go past a soccer field where there aren't kids who are just starting out into sports that are out running around.
Yeah, it's still very much obviously a youth sport, just because it's simple to be a part of. You don't really need a lot of equipment. A lot of parents obviously get their kids involved in it in the younger side, because it's very different to every other American sport. It's the only sport you don't use your hands in. It's a lot of coordination, balance, those kinds of different, athletic requirements for the sport. So, again, it's still very popular from the youth side, and it's growing on the adult side. I think that's really the big difference, because it's that generation, that have gone through playing it from kids, that are now playing it, that now have kids and they're going to get their kids involved, but they're a bit more educated about, the different leagues and the levels and stuff.
Absolutely. When we see players go through kind of the club structure and kind of move on, do they generally stay in the U.S., or is there movement to international clubs? How's that structured?
There are a few younger Americans that are starting to kind of make the move abroad, but the MLS is pretty strong. Is a pretty strong league. Obviously the players that are coming through, I think something that the MLS did a few years ago, they brought in that Next Pro league, which is almost their under-23 league. So that they were looking for like the feeder system for when the guys had come out of their academy at like 17, 18. What do they do next? Do they go to college and play? Or, they don't want to make that direct jump to the professionals to be playing with men. So they kind of that segue of that and what they call the next MLS Next Pro. So that's been obviously a good development to it. And again, obviously they're expanding. There's new teams coming in all the time. I think they're up to 30 plus teams now already. So I mean, the league itself is healthy right now. Is growing healthy. There's still, obviously depending on the times and that you're looking to try and send somebody over there. I don't know how many people would be willing to move to Europe at like 15, 16. Which is usually back home in England. That's usually 15, 16 is when you're getting moved on to a professional club and you're starting to sign like what they call schoolboy contracts. So it is such a young age. Yeah, soccer's one of those weird sports where you can be told at like 16, 17 that you're not going to make it as a pro. So just obviously, at that stage, that was what happened to me, at 16, and then I moved into the coaching side of things. So it's a unique sport in that aspect. But I think as far as the movement within the players, moving over to Europe and players staying around here, like I said, I think that was previously because there wasn't really a sustained league in the country. Do you know what I mean? For guys to play at. Now there is, now they're bringing world class players over. Best player in the world is currently here right now in Messi. And obviously they're bringing other players around. Which obviously generates the buzz, but also as well elevates the team. Which then obviously elevates the players around it. So
absolutely, I think you talked about the difference in just the game from a lot of American sports. But I think a huge thing that kind of separates it from a fan point of view is just the difference in kind of how the leagues are structured and how the club systems work. I think that's fascinating to learn about, but it's a little bit complicated for people who aren't too familiar with it. We got to take a quick break. When we come back, let's get into what World Cup soccer coming to the U.S. really means.
The All Men's Health Fair is...
Welcome back to the Art Lewis Show. Jonathan Dent filling in for Art today. I've got Charlie Rood along with me. We're talking with Steve Walker, the coach of Oakland County Football Club, about the World Cup tournament coming to the U.S. and the rest of North America as well. But everybody knows we're the most important anyway, so we might as well talk about us. We're the ones that don't know what football really is. And kind of on that note, we talked a little bit about the club structure and things. Now, this isn't club soccer coming to the U.S. This is national, teams being put together.
Teams. Yeah, these are this is the big tournament every 4 years, and again the big one because obviously every 4 years each continent will do theirs. So Europe will do one, South America will do their one. Central America will do their own tournaments, but this is the big one where everybody's involved. So, and the first time where it's been actually over three separate countries. It's obviously
Really?
the main country. Obviously a lot of the games are in the US, but there's 2 locations in Canada, I believe Toronto and Vancouver, and then there's 3 in Mexico. So, yeah, it's like I said. Obviously, they've expanded it as well this year with more teams. So the obviously the tournament will go to a round of 32 this year.
So let's talk about that structure real quick, because there's going to be a group stage to start things off.
Yep, there's 12 groups of 4 teams. You'll play everybody once, and then it's the top 2, and then the 8 best third place teams.
Okay, so they move on to this round of 32. And then it's 16 quarters, semis, finals.
Yeah, because this is like a 5-week.
Yeah, this is
about
big.
that?
This is quite long. They've extended it quite a bit. I mean, I think they've almost doubled the amount of teams that are involved in it. So, I mean, which is, from a fan side of things, it's great. There's games on pretty much, I think, every day for, I think, nearly 3.5 weeks. So
we have an appreciation of this tournament coming to the country, but do we really understand of how big this is to the rest of the world? I mean, in the rest of the world, soccer is, in some of these countries, that is their sport. That is their definition of their character, of their culture.
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to kind of explain it when it comes to, I mean, obviously my own country, I've been over here 20 plus years now. I've been over here quite a long time. Spent more of my life actually in this country than I have in my own. But I know an example right now, like kids are still in school right now. Kids over here are just breaking up. Kids in England are still in school till mid-July. And when England are on, the school will actually bring the groups, the kids together in like an assembly hall, and they'll watch the game.
Really?
Yeah. So actual school will stop for these kinds of situations. So, and then obviously if you've got, one of the teams that's projected to go pretty far, and win it takes over the country, if you will. The whole country kind of gets behind it. I just feel with America, it's getting there. I mean, I know people that are just as excited as I am, for the US. They've already got all the US games set up, watch parties and all that kind of stuff. I think it's getting there. I just think because of all the different sports that you've got going on. I mean, obviously right now they're competing with the NBA Finals, which is huge right now. So that's obviously going to be again something. But I think it's coming into a time of American sports in the time of year where there's really not that much going on other than baseball.
Although for that matter, it's still early in the baseball season.
Yeah,
so.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's still kind of, not that, it's not getting down to the meat and potatoes, like you said, the playoff time where people are really kind of starting to lock in. So I'm hoping, that obviously will help, the viewership, the times of the games, obviously because they're over here, they're at actual normal times. I think the latest game, is an 11 o'clock, but that's because it's a West Coast game. So obviously for us it's 11 o'clock at night. So that's going to help, obviously, people being able to watch it at the right times.
To that point, going back to the world structure that this is, so for other countries that are so deep into this, it might be the middle of the night, but
yes,
they'll be watching.
Yeah, they will be watching.
They'll be up and watching, yeah, for sure.
The countries will stop during the day, but they'll be up at night.
Yeah, and there'll be certain things like, I know obviously like the pub culture is big in England. Like they'll have, pubs will have special licenses, to open up at certain times, and so that they can have people coming, because there's always that one that one group of people that's like, can't watch the game at home, I've got to watch it in a pub with a bunch of random strangers. So I mean, yeah, there's no real time frame when it comes to those people, and they want to watch their sport. They'll get up at any time in the morning. I think we chatted before. I said about the 2002 World Cup in Korea and Japan. Those games were at 1 in the morning here. I remember getting up at 1 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning to watch games. So, I mean, that's obviously the beauty of it. People get up at any time to kind of watch the game and see. But I think, on a whole, last time the tournament was here, in '94, we talked about, obviously the growth of it and the expansion, and obviously the league, and how the league kind of became a part of it after it, the MLS. So I'm looking forward to seeing how, what the knock-on effect is, of having the main tournament, like the number one tournament for our sport here, and then just seeing like how many new fans, actually sit down and watch the game. because it's on at an appropriate time, and they want to watch their own team. That's one thing. Americans are very patriotic, so they'll get behind their team, regardless of what kind of sport it is. So I know the Olympics is huge over here, when that's on. So I think people will get behind the US, and they've got a good team this year. Mauricio Pochettino, they're run by an Argentinian who's got a lot of experience. Quite a lot of their players play in Europe. So they should do well this year.
You talk about Americans getting patriotic, and I want to touch on team in just a little bit, but it makes me think of, was it last year or 2 years ago when the Americans won in a major world cricket tournament, and everybody in the U.S. went to look up what's cricket.
I mean, the amount of people that here you guys should be good at pretty much most sports. I mean, I was reading something. I think it was Chad Ochocinco. He was at that tournament that they had in North Carolina. And it's called the TST, the soccer tournament. We actually put a team in it from Oakland County. We had a group of guys go down there, and our owner and president went down there with the group. And he was at that tournament, and he was even saying there, like, if our best quote-unquote athletes, your basketball players, your football players, if they played soccer, I think US would be, a world force. But then it's also as well, you don't really see many, 6'8" soccer players, the size of some of the basketball players, or even, the football players, players like Myles Garrett and stuff like that. I don't know if he would transcend across to soccer. But then you watch a lot of the Europeans, Wembanyama's, a prime example, French, he plays soccer. Some of the other guys, I don't know if Doncic or any of those guys play soccer, but I know a lot of the Europeans are kind of still involved in it.
If they weren't playing it, they were paying attention to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Real quick, though, I want to maybe do this real quick, Jonathan, before we move on to the next one. Just because you mentioned this is kind of interesting. You mentioned Tracy earlier. For those that don't know, Tracy Walker is our sales manager here, and Steve happens to be her husband. You're a native of England, obviously. I think a few people can tell that.
Right.
How'd a soccer-loving player, coach from there end up over here?
So I worked, like I said, decided that obviously wasn't going to make it as a professional back in England. So then got into coaching and was just looking for different opportunities for coaching. It was hard to get into the coaching world in England just because there's so many people, and a lot of the times clubs will kind of take ex-professionals or guys that kind of were within their clubs. So it's hard to break into. So I came out to the US in '98 to get my first bit of experience about the country. The people never visited before. Loved every minute of that summer, so decided to come back out a couple of years later, and then started actually working for a company called MLS Camps, which were actually connected to the teams, but then also had camps in other areas as well that didn't have MLS programs. So worked with them for a summer. Got picked up by a school in Missouri. Played a year of college soccer down in Missouri, just to kind of see how that. Is obviously different. College sports is nowhere near what it is in England, what it is over here back in England. Excuse me. So just obviously got that experience, enjoyed that. Liked that whole side of things. Worked then for another couple of years. Decided that I wasn't going to stay in college. Didn't want to be a student athlete. And started working again, and then actually landed in Michigan through MLS. MLS Camps, and was working in Midland Soccer Club, and then actually got picked up by the coach at the time at Saginaw Valley. That was 2002. So I played 02, 03, and 04 at SVSU. I met Tracy as I was playing my last year at Saginaw Valley, and then obviously we've been together since. So yeah, it's. A lot of people ask, like, what am I doing in a small town like Saginaw? But I mean, ultimately, it's. I don't know. It's. I never envisioned that I would live, in somewhere like this, a small town in Saginaw. But I really like Saginaw. I've got a lot to do here, and again, I've got a lot of memories in this place. But it's there's actually more internationals than you would think that come over and do it now. I mean, it was before when I first started doing it was pretty rare. Now it's pretty frequent. There's wherever you go, there's internationals that, in most of the schools now. They're viewing it as a way to come over here. And I think really for the English, the main difference was when it comes to the college side is college is not free in England anymore. You have to start paying for it. So then guys were looking at it as like, all right, I'll come over and play soccer, and I can live in America, have a great life, travel the country, go see different parts of the country. So yeah, that's kind of my story in a bit of a nutshell. So a little bit of a shortened version, but yeah,
that's the connection.
Cool.
That's why he's sitting with us today.
That's exactly it.
Ties to all the local.
Yeah, I mean,
institutions.
I've worked. So I worked at Midland Soccer Club initially. Then when Vardar came into Saginaw, I worked for them. Done a little bit of work at Bay City. Mm-hmm. Worked for Nationals that's here in town. So I've worked for all of them.
Northwood.
Worked at Northwood for just finished there. I was 7 years at Northwood on their men's side. Did a couple of years at the women's program at Saginaw Valley there with Drago when Drago was involved. So yeah, I feel like I've worked at Nouvelle High School on their boys' side, done the Heritage Girls. So I've kind of touched every level within Saginaw. But so yeah, it's been fun.
Very interesting. We're going to take a quick break, talk a little bit more World Cup soccer when we come back with Steve Walker.
Got a home repair problem? Don't get mad.
Welcome back to the Art Lewis Show. Jonathan Dent filling in for Art today, along with Charlie Rood. I brought him in because he's a little bit more knowledgeable on sports, and we're talking sports World Cup soccer with Steve Walker. And starting up next week, all these teams going to be in the U.S. You talked a little bit during some previous segments about some of the standout players and how the U.S. is stacked up to go. But there are 48 teams entering this tournament, some of them for the first time for their country. What are some of the highlights? What are some of the things that are going to be interesting that you want to keep an eye on that maybe if someone's interested in keeping tabs on the tournament, maybe might stand out to them?
I mean, some of the first-time teams, that are coming into it, they're obviously, when you come into something like this, there's no real expectations from the fans. There's no expectations from the country. Yeah. It's not like it's a Spain or a France or a Germany or, where the country are expecting you to go far and expecting you, to win the majority of your games and go on and win the whole tournament. So I think that'll be good. Obviously, different cultures, coming into the tournament and how they kind of mix and and how they kind of do. I remember a couple of years ago in Africa they had the vuvuzela horn. That was one thing, and you could hear that all the time, on the TV when you were watching the game. So just the different, and again the fact that it's in Mexico and the fact that it's in the US, and and some of the stadiums that's at in the US, hold so many people. The atmosphere itself is is going to be electric at some of those games. So just there's always a dark horse, there's always a team that tanks, the team that's expected to come in and do well will fail. There's always a player that, a random player that you've never heard of that suddenly becomes, suddenly he's, one of the most exciting players out there. So there's all those kinds of things that, you're kind of looking forward to seeing. There's always, like I said, the dark horse team that, that knocks off one of the powers. There's always one of those that'll end up, maybe they've not got the right kind of blend with the players they're bringing in, so they kind of don't perform.
So on that note, let's take that from your perspective. The favorite, and is there a dark horse?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always going to say I'm always going to want it to come home.
I understand that.
I'm always going to vote for England. I mean, and I do actually this year. The squad that he's picked, is very balanced. We don't have the biggest problem I think for us in previous years is we bring the superstar players in and then he try and like wedge the superstars in and play them out of position, and it's like, well, we need to get this guy in and this guy in, and the actual balance of the team was off. I think this year he's done it a lot different. This is also the first year where the players that are actually playing well right now towards the end of the season for their teams, their club teams, those are the players that he's brought in. So the players that are actually in form. It's just, if you've never been to England, the media in England is just absolutely horrendous. I mean,
well, isn't that good to know?
Oh,
yeah,
great.
The
It's not just here.
Yeah, the newspapers and TV and everything. Like I say, it takes over the whole country. So the pressure, from that kind of environment when it comes to the players. So, like I said, and as long as we don't get a penalty, as long as we don't go to penalties, then we'll be fine, because that seems to always end our tournament. That's what happened last year when we missed the penalty. It's against France that ended up cutting us out. So I think us, Spain are obviously very strong. They've just come off winning the Euros a couple of years ago. France have a ridiculous embarrassment of talent. Germany are obviously always very strong.
Your traditional powerhouses.
Your traditional powerhouses, Portugal. But then I also think, like I said, you've got your South Americans. Argentina obviously won it last year. They're bringing back pretty much the majority of their squad from last year. So again, that experience of going far in the tournament and winning the tournament, that obviously helps. You can never count Brazil out. The only country to make every single tournament so far. But then, the African teams have been coming along very well. Your teams like Morocco. Teams like that, Ghana are, a relatively strong team. Ivory Coast, that they're all good, strong teams, and all of them are filled with players that play in high level teams, in Europe and stuff like that. So that obviously helps from there. Some of the dark horses, the Japanese team, is a very exciting team to watch. If you're coming into this tournament, without obviously you want to follow the US, but you want kind of like an outside team to watch. I highly recommend watching Japan. They're exciting. The way they play, and you can see that their development model that they've had as a country, is really helping with the players that come through. Because, like I said, a lot of the players, technically exceptionally good players, got a lot of creativity. Athletic, that's always a big product of them as well. So, for me, I hope I'm celebrating our second World Cup ever. But I think for me, if it's not us, then I think Portugal. I think Portugal will go pretty far, and I'm calling Japan for my dark horse. I think they'll do well. I think they'll upset a few teams for sure.
We've got that noted down.
Yeah.
Yes.
We've got the predictions.
There you go.
And we can root for the mother country.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Well, Christian always says as well, he's like, well, at least if England don't do well, maybe I've got the US as well, so he can kind of bounce between the two. Yeah, he can double dip between the two.
All right, we're going to take another break. We'll be back for one more segment with Steve Walker after this.
Ready to update your home and...
We're back here on the Art Lewis Show. Jonathan Dent with Charlie Rood filling in, talking with Steve Walker about some World Cup soccer. The Art Lewis Show presented by Westside Decorating Center, 5789 State Street in Saginaw, or go online to westsidedecoratingcenter.com. Now, for this last segment, I'm going to expose myself as not knowing hardly anything about soccer, but I would like to catch at least a couple of the U.S. games. Now, Steve, when I'm sitting down to watch a game, you're throwing around words like penalties and that being a big thing, and during the break we were talking about how extra time works. How is the game structured? How long am I going to be sitting there glued to the TV for, and what am I going to see?
So you'll have 2 45-minute periods. So those are obviously main things. Again, if it's tied at the end of regulation, in those first 3 games, 3 points for a win, 1 point for a tie, no points for a loss. Then when it gets to the knockout stages, which is round of 32, round of 16, if it's tied at the end of the regulation, then there'll be a 30-minute extra time period. So that'll be 2 15-minute halves. If it's still tied at the end of that 30 minutes, then it'll go to penalty kicks. Penalty kicks, obviously, free shot from 12 yards out. Each team gets 5 penalties. If it's tied at the end of those 5 penalties, then it goes into what they call sudden death, which means if you score and I miss,
1 for 1,
then you win. There's a couple of variations with the extra time. There used to be a thing called golden goal, whereas if you score, your team goes through. They scrapped that a few years ago. So again, you're guaranteed the 30 minutes. So again, that brings different tactics to the game. Obviously tired. At that point you'll have been 120 minutes if you play the whole the full 30. That's 2 hours worth of soccer. Of running around like that. So again, it's physically and mentally to draining. And penalties is a tough way to go. I think one of the things we talked about in the break was like, what would the verdict be if the Stanley Cup final went to a shootout? You know what I mean? That's not the case. You guys just keep playing and playing and playing and playing. I think the tactics are different for extra time. Some teams that are maybe, that feel like they don't have the legs for it. They can just sit back, put 10 men behind the ball and play for penalties. England as a country were just renowned for losing major tournaments on penalties. I think we've lost like 6 or 7 major tournaments between the World Cup and Euros on penalty kicks. So penalties is a little bit of a I don't know how to put it for us, but it's something that we don't look forward to as English people is going to penalties. So I mean, it's exciting for the neutral, for the spectator, because what seems like should be a relatively easy, thing to do, a free shot, you against the goalkeeper from 12 yards out, there's a lot that goes into it from like I said, from a mental side of things. Obviously you've got everybody watching, and it's like, you know where you want to put it, but then it's like, well, is he going to get to that spot? Maybe I should go somewhere different. Or there's a lot that goes into penalties. It's not as easy as it looks.
As a spectator, a lot of times I want to know the rules. I want to know what's going on. We've only got a few minutes here, but other than kick the ball into the opposing team's net, what are some of the things we got to be on the lookout for? Offsides, corner kicks, things. What?
Offside. You've opened up a can for a few minutes left with it comes to offside.
We can talk about that. Get rid of the offside, and you might open up the popularity.
Yeah,
so
if indoor there's no offsides. Indoor you can kind of play from that. So offside is basically you can't be behind the last line of defence.
Yep.
So you can't be behind the last defender and the goalkeeper, and the ball gets played to you. You can be in line. You can be there when the ball gets to you, because it's when the ball is played. So if I pass it to you and you're onside, if you're kind of in line with the defenders, if I pass it to you and then you run and go, you receive the ball behind them, you're still onside.
Are they reviewing that now too?
They are. Obviously they've come in quite strict with the video cameras and stuff like that now. It's called VAR, the video assistant referee. Slows the game down a little bit, but again, with the amount of money that's involved, you have to make sure that you're spot on, because it's still human error at the end of the day. With the referees do as good a job as they can, but again, you couldn't pay me enough money to be a referee.
And those offside calls.
Yeah, those offside calls. I mean, you're looking along the line, and and shoulders just passed.
Think of it as an offside in hockey. How important that is. It's the same thing.
Yeah,
except the line moves.
Yeah, exactly. So from those sides of things, and again, you're putting yourself out there in a referee, because it's like you make that call and it's maybe not right, and all of a sudden somebody sitting there in a booth somewhere is looking at a video and be like, oh no, you got that wrong. But you can't be like, oh, you got that. Like, you have to, hey, listen, this was wrong. It should have been this. You've then got to continue on the rest of the game. Be like, well, I got that one was wrong. You know what I mean? I hope I get the next one right. When it comes to those situations. So, yeah, the officiating has become a lot more strict, a lot harder. I think, in my opinion, just because the game's a lot faster. You know what I mean? To kind of make those decisions. I think just the main thing really that to get when you're watching the game is just don't get. It's not, they're not high scoring games. It's not like football. It's not like basketball. You're not we scoring. It is, but look at it from a tactical side of things. You know what I mean? Like what and these guys are doing this while running at full speed. Sprinting to situations. Challenging, jumping. Heading the ball. Holding people off. All those kinds of things, and then still trying to control, a soccer ball with your feet. Which again is very, is not like any other American sport. Every American sport is all hand-eye coordination, everything. Even down with hockey, with the stick, nothing is where you'd literally just, strictly using your feet. And I think that's why a lot of parents get kids into it at a young age, because it deals well with coordination and balance and stuff like that. So,
well, we'll be keeping an eye on it. We know you'll be keeping a very close eye on it.
100%.
Steve, thanks for joining us today. We'll be back to close out after this.
Let's be honest.
That's it for the Art Lewis Show here today. I'll be back with you again on Monday, filling in for Art. Stick around for the Focus program. We'll be talking with some people from Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity about the Men's Health Fair coming up tomorrow here in Saginaw. Before that, the news, national, international reports from ABC. Then Mike Percha in the WSGW newsroom with the local and state news.
Broadcasting from the